I've got Amy Hines back on the show. She joined us earlier this year, and we're going to have a really in-depth, interesting conversation about masculinity, the men in our world right now. Her and I were having some drinks a couple weeks ago, and we were kind of chatting about this conversation. And I was like, you know what? I think we need to do a podcast on this because it really does feel like we're experiencing a masculinity crisis. And we kind of want to give our 2 cents on what we're seeing with men and women and how all of the relations that are happening in the mix, and really just get really honest about our perception, our points of view, what we've heard from men and women, and kind of see where this goes. I know, Amy, you've got so much to share. Welcome back to the show, by the way.
Thanks. Oh, thank you, girl. It's so great to be back. Yeah, we were having such a great conversation. We're like, we really should be recording this. We need to.
I know. It was really juicy. It was
It
juicy.
was so good. Yes, and profound. And I feel like these are things that just people, women in particular, are not talking about in the ways that they should. I think, we talk about toxic masculinity. I think there's a level of toxic femininity, or whatever it is that you would call it. I mean, there's a whole culture out there, and women are perpetuating it now, and then we complain that we don't get what we want, and our society is eroding. And why is that? How do we? So yeah, we just started talking about, there are different conversations I feel like that need to be had, and so how do we have those? And we started having a lot of fun with that. So we figured we'd bring it to all of you. Now you can all just listen in on our little girl talk.
Yes. Well, I mean, personally, when I look at the state of our world right now, I think one of the things that becomes very clear, and actually, I got a really interesting email that, you know what, maybe I should lead off with that. Let me pull it up right now, because it was so synchronistic that this email came into my inbox today. I don't know if you follow Jake Woodward. Jake Woodard.
I don't.
He's great. He's really leading. He's really kind of doing some excellent work when it comes to the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and how to really harmonize those energies within you, not just for your own personal relationship with self, but relationship with another. And he put out an email today called "Why Masculinity is Being Targeted." And I wholeheartedly agree with him. So let's use this as our launch pad, and we'll go in.
I like it. This sounds like it's going to be very much in line with what we were talking about.
Yes.
It is under assault. Full frontal assault.
Yes.
100%.
I agree. So he wrote, "Hey, Nicole, I'm going to share a realization that I've had over the past few years of why healthy masculinity is being targeted. Take a moment and look around at the current health of men. Testosterone levels are plummeting, depression rates are through the roof, and a vast majority of men are overweight and unhealthy. Most men have some addiction that controls their lives, such as porn, drugs, alcohol, or working themselves into the ground.
Yeah.
The reason why they want to keep men sick, distracted, and weak is that they know when men are strong and vital, they cannot be controlled. And a man who cannot be controlled is much more likely to challenge a broken system. It is not that masculinity is a threat to society. It's the lack of healthy masculinity that threatens our society."
There it is.
Yes. Why? Because a healthy masculine man is the ultimate protector. He protects the feminine essence. He protects his family unit. He protects his tribe. A man who embodies healthy masculinity is a warrior in the garden. He doesn't look for combat, but he is ready if it comes. Oh, chills, girl, chills.
Come on. Yes, and yes. This is a perfect way to kick it off.
Yep.
Yeah. Bravo. Because that's exactly what we were talking about. And I talked to a buddy of mine that I deeply, deeply respect. And he's actually a member of my production team. and one of the things he kind of brought up in our conversation, because I told him I was going to be doing this podcast with you, and we could have kept talking and talking and talking. And he mentioned this idea of, and there's actually a book about it, but velvet covered steel, and just the picture of that. And I'm like, yes, please. Yes.
It's
Can
so
I please have
interesting.
me some of that?
You know, that is so interesting you say that, because my friend told me that talking to me, like when I give messages or I share insight, whether it's with a friend or maybe even a client, although I do feel I'm a little bit more compassionate with my clients, is he says, you are like a velvet revolver.
Oh,
When,
yeah.
yeah. And he goes, you're straight to the point, you're going to hit your target, but there's velvet there to soften, you know, all of it. So you're
Yeah.
definitely driving home truth. And I think in many ways, that's really ultimately like a very strong masculine energy, you know, and of course we have masculinity within us all. We all have the feminine, we all have the masculine, but as men, I believe their strength is their masculinity, in like, that's what they're truly meant to embody here, fully, while the feminine essence of themselves is a support to that main.
Yes.
Whereas as women, our femininity is our strength, but our masculine energy is our support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. And we have women that are trying to lead and do everything. And just because we can does not mean that we should.
You, oh, girl, it's like we have the same mind.
Yeah. Yeah. It can and should, just because we can does not mean that we should. And some of us have developed these things from, we've had to do a lot of things on our own out of necessity, out of dysfunction, right? That's not what we're talking about. The things that you and I are going to be discussing tonight are when things are functioning the way that they should be functioning, right? And so a lot of this stuff that we're seeing is coming from a place of complete and utter dysfunction. Some of it we can control, some of it we can't. But once we get to the point where we can control something, then we have an obligation to get it back on course. You know,
I
like single
agree.
mothers, that's an entirely different conversation, right? So a lot of the things that we're going to be saying aren't from that space. Men that don't have good intentions, men that are just out playing the field and working the program. You know, that's not what we're talking about here. Those are case examples of what not to do, what not to do.
Well, I think we also live in a system that actually supports a fatherless family. And so we have to be mindful of that. And I think that a lot of men have not grown up with the right father modeling, whether the
Yes.
father was completely absent or just absent emotionally, you know, mentally, maybe just not around as much, maybe just the breadwinner, who knows. But
Yeah.
really having that strong masculine role model has been something our society hasn't been able to embrace over the last few decades. And now in the last couple of decades, we're seeing a system that actually supports a single family, a single family unit,
Yeah.
where women will get more money from the government if the father isn't there. Isn't that?
It is, and it is intentional.
Yeah.
None of this stuff is by accident. If you can take the men out, if you can neutralize your men, and this is what the Romans did to the Spartans, if you can neutralize the men, you can control a society. If you can pussify the men, you can control a society, right? And then we've got these women out there, these domineering women that want a pussified man. Also, not what we are talking about. I'm telling you, girl, like that, my vagina is going to pack up and go home. I need none of that. Like, you know, and I think we have a lot of men out there that are well-intended and they don't know where to go because either dad wasn't around or dad was around, but dysfunctionally. So he was abusive, or like you're saying, present but absent. And we've got, you know, men that were raised by single mothers who, you know, either didn't discipline them at all or told them to be careful to the point that they're afraid to adventure. Like we cannot take out. I heard that this was put so well. I heard this this guy was talking about how he and his son were going to go skiing for, Boys' Day in his son's teenage years. And his wife is like, okay, now, like they're getting ready to pull out. It's like, just be careful. Just be careful. And he's like, babe, first of all, we're snowboarding. Careful is really not like, if you're careful, you're not going to have fun, or you're going to make a mess of yourself even more so. Like, I will bring him back home. I can promise you that. I can't promise you won't have a broken arm. Like, I can't promise you that. But we're going to have fun, and we're going to do man stuff, and we need to be able to be allowed to be men, and that instinct, mothers want to protect their sons, like, just be super careful and don't ride your bike. Sure, have him wear a helmet when he's riding his bike, but he may break his arm out there flipping off of ramps. Do not kill that within him. That is the part that makes him that warrior man, that God designed him to be that way. Do not neutralize that. But also, women need to sit down and shut up for a minute and just let the men, like, even if the men are not being perfect, stop trying to fix him before he has a chance to even make a mistake.
Oh, yes. And this is where we really got into it, because
It was so good.
While we've really worked at the importance of women having an equal role in a relationship that is just as valued, and the woman's voice is just as important,
Absolutely.
which I think is great. I think that has been very much needed. We've now, though, tipped the scales where, men can't speak at all. And, I was like, I would just rather we as women would let men actually speak, even if it was imperfect,
Right.
even if it didn't sound great. But this idea that, if we really want men to be able to be better communicators, well, we have to be better listeners.
Right. So yes, so much yes. And don't shut them down and correct them right away. Like, women, we'll talk to each other in the bathroom, for heaven's sakes. Like, we talk. And a lot of times, even women will say to women, and we understand this in the female culture, I just need to talk it out, right? I don't even necessarily need you to fix it for me. I probably even know what I'm going to do, but I need to talk it out, right? I'm getting my thoughts out there so I can organize them and work through them. Why can't men have that as well? Right? Now, there's a difference between, like, there is a point where men need to work some of that stuff out. Like, God designed them to be the protector and the provider. Again, we can, doesn't mean that we should. This is just God's design. There's a reason for it. And men need women, women need men. We need to celebrate our differences, but there are some of those things that they need to, take to God to work it out. Like, they have to have leadership. Let's talk about what this kind of man looks like, right? This is a man who is not only well-intended, but he submits to sound leadership, right? He's looking for, if he can't find it, he's looking for it. Sound leadership that can lead him. He's looking for community of men that he can go to. And there are some places that men need to go to talk about some of those things, so that when they do come home, they can be the leader and the protector. That doesn't mean don't be vulnerable. That means be velvet covered steel.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be more steel than there is velvet. Right now, we got a bunch of velveteen teddy bears walking around with their man buns and their nose rings and their skinny jeans. And I need none of that. Thank you very much. So they have to have a place where they can, work out some of those things so that they can be that at home, but also knowing, like, hey, we're giving them space to speak, to have a voice, to work out, their thoughts. In a way where they can communicate in the ways that we are asking them to,
Yeah, yeah. And I think that it's important when someone doesn't know how to communicate their feelings, because, well, for one, they're maybe out of touch with what their real feelings are, because they weren't allowed to actually have their feelings, which was an unfortunate program in our society and in a lot of families when it
Yeah.
comes to boys growing up. But if we're really wanting them to be more in touch with their feelings, that just means they need to understand what those feelings are. They have to be willing to communicate those feelings without fear of being rejected if they don't say it in the right way, or it comes across as offensive. And I think one of the ways that we can navigate that is that when our partner, whether it's the female or the male, or whether it's a same-sex relationship, and one's more of the feminine, one's more of the masculine, whatever it is, the partner who is listening needs to listen. Like, don't respond for the sake of responding. Our responses should be more of, let's take that deeper and really make sure that when that person is sharing, it has nothing to do with you. When you approach a conversation, knowing first and foremost that whatever they're going to say, it has nothing to do with you, it helps you not make it personal. And now they can express what they need to. It may not be in the way that feels good to you, but at least now you have an opportunity to understand them better. And they feel heard. And we live in a culture in a society that is really wounded when it comes to feeling seen and feeling heard.
Yeah. And that's why we've got people screaming at the top of their lungs. Like now, it's a whole other discussion, but identity, right? Our identity, we're leading with feelings, which that should never be in the driver's seat, right? Your feelings are transient. They should be seasoning to your meal. Shouldn't be the whole meal, right? Like feelings are important. Understanding them is important, but we can't just be leading by our feelings, right? Now we've got where genetics is a feeling. Stop it. We have to have some reason, and women have a tendency to lead with their feelings. Men have a tendency to lead with logic. Those are a good balance. They need to mix and commingle with one another. But
there are times when feelings are more appropriate, and there are times when logical thought processes are more important. Like it's really dependent on the situation and what you're going through and what the goals are. And so it's really understanding when the right time is for each, and how to know that there's going to be a little bit more of one and a little less of the other, or vice versa. And of course, we kind of have to teach ourselves, because we're certainly not in a society that's wanting to teach us in our schooling systems or through media. They want to teach us all the really unhealthy, toxic ways to relate to one another. Like that whole
it's a distant way of relating to each other. It's breaking up over text. It's that sort of thing is designed, like the way that media is set up in general, is designed to elicit a response. Everything is designed to cause us to be short fused. Everything is designed on a 30-second, reel, a 1-minute reel. And our attention span has gotten to the point where, back to your point, we don't listen. We listen for the sake of responding. And we need to listen, like you're saying, take ourselves out of it. It's not about you right now. It's not about me right now. It's about the person speaking, and give them a chance to really speak. And if you're going to ask questions, you ask it to genuinely get to know the person and why they think that way. You might not agree with it. That's not the point in that moment. It is establishing, I want to understand you. And we're a team, and establishing that too, so speaking from a committed relationship, a marriage specifically, argue well, and but always establish that you are on the same team. I don't agree with you at this moment, but I love you, and love is an action. That's not a feeling, but that's a different topic. But on back to the masculinity piece, I mean, we need men who are masculine, who are strong. We need that leadership. We personally need it. Our society, our communities need it. Our families need it. And for me, I would eat a weak man alive, right? And I struggle though, because men don't have that role model. And they haven't had it in most families for many years, or most communities for many years. When I will explain to somebody that I'm attempting to date that, and they'll recognize fairly quickly, like we're strong women. And I'll say, I need leadership. What they hear is, I need a dom. It's not the same thing. Can we just be super clear on that? They're not the same thing
No.
whatsoever. And, leadership comes from a place of respect. And I think, I read this book many years ago, and it was called Love and Respect. And we speak differently. Women, for a woman to feel loved, she needs to hear words of love, of affection. For a man to feel loved, he needs to hear words of respect, of adoration. Not like his mama. You're not adoring him like his mama. None of us need to be your mama, and you shouldn't want us to be. But building up, that masculinity. Ooh, babe, you brought in, look at you. You grabbed all of those groceries in one trip. Let me tell you. All of a sudden he's like, yeah, baby.
I pride myself on that, by the way. The fact that I can bring in all my groceries in one trip.
There's not need to be making more than one trip. But if we're feeding that cycle, even if we're feeling depleted, right? We're feeling depleted in love. If we feed that cycle of respect, again, going back to the idea of a woman of character and a man of character, right? Not these people that are just cheater's going to cheat, right? And even good men who are men of character may find themselves in that position if they are neglected, if they're abused, if they've just had no leadership and they're trying, but they don't have the tools, right? We women need to be encouraging them to get into community where they can acquire those tools. Don't isolate them. Don't keep them away from man time, nor should they do that to us. We need that place to kind of recharge and refill.
Yeah.
But this is what we need, that we need our men to step up and lead, but respect them enough that you can start filling your own tank, right? If you pay them respect, all of a sudden they will be inspired to love you. You can show them the ways to love you without treating them like a project or being their mother. But communication, talk to them, give them a chance, like you're saying, to talk imperfectly. They'll work it out.
I know, and I agree, and I think that's something that I missed the boat on, in like my 20s and 30s. I'm paying more attention to it now in my 40s, and I'm seeing how valued it is by men, that when you do, for lack of a better term, stroke their ego, okay, it goes a long way. And you're not doing it out of, like, it's not genuine, but you're doing it out of the sense that you understand, like, a man wants to feel needed in your life, like that he has a place that offers you solutions, okay, or offers you a better way of living. And it's not that you can't have an amazing way of living on your own, ladies. It's not about that. It's about what the man, feels. And so I think that it's important, as much as I really like to know from a man that, he's very attracted to me, or that he's emotionally connected, like that we have like really good conversations and all of that. Like when I feel like I've got a man's attention and he's like tuned in, like that does something for me. Like I like that. Equally, if a man needs to be told some things, like words of affirmation, which is totally a love language, right?
Yes.
I think it's very valuable. It's very valuable. And I think that we have to get out of our own way of thinking, well, that's not what I need, It's like a partnership requires two. And we have to know where the compromise is. And compromise doesn't mean that you're giving things up that are vital to you, but knowing like where the bending needs to take place, right? Like where we give and where we flow. And so I think that's important. And I've heard that a lot from men, that respect is extremely important to them when it comes to how their partner views them.
Yeah. And it's oh gosh, so many
And
things.
treats them, I should say too.
Right. Views them, treats them. So love languages, men have love languages just like women have love languages. Physical touch is usually going to be top two for a man, as well it should be. Women need to stop weaponizing sex. We'll get to that one way or the other, right? Stop withholding it and neglecting them.
I know.
Stop neglecting and abusing your men. Stop it. It's not okay.
Okay, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that, because that's a really interesting topic that you just brought up, withholding sex.
Yes.
That is horrible to do. It is horrible to do because, first of all, sex is an extremely sacred union of pleasure, of connection, and to take that away from your partner as a way to prove a point or to get something you want is straight up manipulation. It's straight up
100%. 100%.
And I just
don't. It's abusive.
Yeah, it is abusive. It really is. I'm really glad that you said that, because it is abusive, and I think women have to own that. I think they need to really see that.
And there's a culture to it too. You and I know, like we know women that if we talk to them, they would be, very much on the feminist side, which the interesting thing about feminism is it's cutting your nose off to spite your face.
Yes.
Honestly, if you respect your men and feed into their love language, again, seeking after men who are men of character, men who are trying, men who are moving in that direction. That's really important, but don't weaponize sex one way or the other. Don't use it to manipulate them when you're dating and just fling it out there, talking about that hoe culture. Women think they're empowered by doing that. You're conditioning men to be exactly the thing that you're trying to overpower and protect yourself from. Period. The end. And so you're teaching them to treat you like that, when really you're just trying to assert your power so that you can be respected. It's this, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, but then they get a man that they want and they marry them in a committed relationship, and then they have a temper tantrum and, hey, he didn't do something right, or whatever the case may be, and you punish them by withholding it.
Yeah.
That we have to stop doing that. Again, that love and respect cycle. If you want love, you need to give him respect. And people don't understand respect. They hear respect and they think, well, I'm demanding, the man is demanding respect, and it is not the same as being domineering. It's leadership. And if someone is under good leadership, if your man is under good leadership, for me, I want a man that is submitted to the authority of God.
Yeah.
Period. The end.
I've noticed in dating that men, it's really hard to find a man who really knows how to take charge, like is okay making decisions for the both of us, feels confident enough. Now, when I say that, I mean, they're making a decision and a choice based off what they know of me. It's not like they're just making it without any consultation with me whatsoever. There's definitely,
they know how you like your coffee.
Yeah, exactly. So I know that some people will hear that and they'll go to the extreme. And I think it's because, well, there's a few things that have gone on in our culture over the last 10 to 20 years that have made men a lot more timid, uncertain, unsure, of like basically walking on eggshells. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them, to be honest. I see it, and it's scary. You're at risk now in these days of losing your entire job, your livelihood, your reputation, just for maybe saying the wrong thing.
Go ahead and call somebody ma'am.
That's all left up to interpretation as well.
Correct. Yeah. Go ahead and call somebody ma'am when they've decided their pronouns are something else today. And we've abused our men to the point where they're afraid to open doors for women. They get scowled at. I can't tell you how many men I have talked to. I would love to open doors for women, but I'm just tired of being abused for it. can open my own door. Yes, you can open your own door, you hag. Let him open the door, because it's good for him to open the door for you. He is trying to respect you. If you want to demand respect, then you stand and wait for him to open the door. You don't scowl at him for opening it.
These are ways that they show care and affection, that they actually care about you. And I personally think it's great. I love it. I don't ever think men should stop doing that. Again, it's not because, ladies, you can't open the door yourself. You most certainly can. It was never about that. It's a really sweet gesture. And I know that there are women in my audience who agree with us and don't buy into a lot of the, let's call it third wave feminism that has completely corrupted and created so much dysfunction in our relationships. It's made dating a disaster. I mean, there are other factors. Let's not like I don't want to bulk it all on that, but you know, it definitely plays a role.
Yeah. And it's hard for us. I mean, if we try to date, we're overcoming all of these crazy things that these women do. And then women have hopped in the driver's seat too. And the kind of man that you want isn't one that you do all the work and you do all the planning and you do all the pursuing. Men are made to be hunters. Let them hunt. Right? And if you honestly give them something to chase, I promise they will keep chasing at home.
You know what I loved? I remember listening to this podcast. I remember listening to this podcast it was maybe a couple years ago. And I can't remember which one it was, but this guy was talking about how he's teaching women how to relearn how to drop the handkerchief. I love that. I love that because it's so true, right? Like we as women, especially like me, I know I did. Growing up, I was so in my masculine energy and I thought that's exactly where I need to be. And like, that's how I'm going to be empowered. And, you know, that's how I'm going to get stuff done. And, you know, no, I'm not going to blame it fully on society and all of that, but there are a lot of reasons for it. But I've been practicing like, okay, how can I learn to drop the handkerchief?
Yeah.
You know, to let the man think he's already helping me and I didn't do that on purpose, you know, right. Or even if I did do it on purpose, I've opened the door for him to come swooping in. So
you're giving him room.
Yes.
Give them room. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
So yeah, so I thought that was a really interesting statement that I heard, and I remember that all the time. I have that constantly in the back of my mind when I've you know realizing, oh, maybe I need to soften myself a little more, and when I say that, because I reckon my default is my masculine. It's just how I was raised. It's how like I've lived the majority of my life. So remembering to ease into my feminine sometimes takes more effort, but I love it. It's not like it's effort I don't enjoy, because every time I'm in it, I really do enjoy being in that place. It feels really good, but sometimes my default takes me out of it and I have to catch myself. I'm like, oh, okay. Right. It's reprogramming yourself, right?
We get on autopilot as single women. We get on autopilot, and that masculine serves a purpose when we're, you know, on our own. But when we're with somebody, I love, and I've even heard it said from men that I've talked to, I love being around a masculine man because that makes me feel more feminine. I'm able to slip into my femininity that I don't necessarily get a chance to be that when I have to take care of my own oil change and all the, you know, all of the sort of things that we just have to do because it needs to get done. And but I really, really thoroughly enjoy sitting in that space with a man that has that kind of masculine, positive, healthy, masculine energy, and a man that has been doing the work. Like you and I have been doing the work, and I'm not out fishing for somebody. I know you're not out fishing for somebody to complete you. We're two whole pieces. We want to look for another whole, you know, another whole piece that, we can cover one another's weaknesses and watch each other's back, kind of thinking of, two people from being former military like I am, if you're thinking tactically, you have two people with their backs next, back to back, and they're each covering a quadrant, but between the two of them, they got the whole 360 covered. It's supposed to be a partnership that's a dance
Yeah.
like that.
Well, it's kind of like when they say the 1 + 1 = 3. It's, the relationship is the third entity. The
Yes.
relationship of the togetherness, the partnership is the third entity within that. And it's necessary. And that's what allows each person to still be an individual, but also bring them together.
Yes. Yeah, don't look for somebody that's completing you. That's the wrong way to do it. And be the sort of person, so I hate to keep bringing it back to it, but I think we need to, if we're going to talk about masculinity, we do need to talk to the women also, and some of the dysfunction they've created that has created this vacuum where we even need to have this conversation for our men. But be the person that you're looking for, right? I want a man who speaks 3 languages and he's well educated and he's, we come up with all these crazy lists, but
Yeah.
what are we doing what are we bringing to the table? What is it that we are offering? If we want this laundry list of exceptional and perfection, what have we done to work out our own stuff? Are we in a point where, like, I've arrived, I've made it, stop it? You're just not self-aware is what that is. There's no such thing as arriving, but you need to be looking for somebody who's on that same path. You're doing your work and you just happen to look to your left and your right, like, oh,
Yeah.
doing
Well, and
work
I also
too.
want to say shout out to the women who are supporting men right now, who are
Yeah.
actually rising above, I think, what our culture and our society is trying to keep women in,
Yeah.
and really recognizing that, we do have roles, and it doesn't mean that role is limiting and that's the role that you stay in, at all times, but we do have roles that are really part of our nature, but we've
Mhm.
been programmed out of them. And that's what's causing a lot of the dysfunction. And I think there's this power struggle that's been going on, and wondering, like, how does the feminine, reclaim her power that has been given away to men or taken away by men? And ultimately, that's by recognizing that, we were conditioned to give it away in many ways in our past society. However, when you do reclaim it, you're not doing so by taking power away from a man. It's just you reclaiming it. Now, what is it about your feminine essence that truly brings you into that strength, that really empowers you? And that, we don't need to lead the world like more men. We just need to have women step up in leadership as women.
Yes. 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 Exactly. I don't want a partner that's just like me. Lord,
Mm-hmm.
I'm enough. I I am a handful enough. My dysfunctions are dysfunctional and my strengths are strong.
Yeah.
But I want somebody who's an excellent complement. Their
There
strengths
has to be a
complement.
polarity.
Yes, and I like that dance, that's fun. It should
Mm-hmm.
be fun. It shouldn't be about control. Because if you're having some fun along the way, then when the stuff really gets hard, when you get married to somebody and the metal meets the meat, those are the things that are gonna kind of help pull you through to the other side when you are having no fun whatsoever. But that polarity is important. We got to stop, like, iron should sharpen iron,
Mm-hmm.
right? Two very strong people should sharpen one another, which means, like, I need somebody that can not only lead me, but when I say lead me, in some ways, stand up to me or um, stand with me when
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a really hard space and I'm not my best self, and they are able to stand up and go, okay, this is, not, you can do better than this, and I'm here to help you. I'm on your team. And how do we, work through this? But they challenge me. And I crave being challenged in a healthy way. But you've talked about, like, you went on there's a difference of that, right? What is leadership versus what is dominance? And you went on a date recently that was like quite an example of that ain't it.
Yeah, which one?
Oh man.
No, it's
Yeah.
like
The golf one.
oh gosh, yeah, the golf one. You know, I think that when it comes to understanding this discussion on a deeper level and understanding the man and the woman, or the masculine and the feminine, uh when we talk about this idea of being challenged, I agree, and it comes down to respect too. I don't want to be with someone who I can walk all over. There is nothing attractive about that.
Mhm.
And I also have to recognize within myself that I can very easily walk all over someone if I
Yeah.
choose to, because I know I carry a lot of power just in like how I was raised, who I am on a soul level, just
Yeah.
how I've always interacted. It's easy for me to go there, but I do also recognize when I have to not diminish my power, but keep it in check, in a sense of,
Yeah.
do I need this right now? Do
Right.
I really need this? Or is there something else about me that I could use to a better, um, I don't want to say advantage, because that's not the right word, but could be more
Just
useful.
use different tools in your toolbox.
Hmm.
Challenge you to maybe paint with a different brush.
But as you know, if a man wants a strong woman, he's got to be a strong man, and he's got to
Yeah.
be stronger than the woman he's dating. And how do we allow, because let's just face it, if we had really strong men and really strong women, this world would be so different.
Oh,
We would
yeah.
not be very easily controlled, right? And we would not be under this influence of our society right now that truly wants us to be complacent. And
Subjects.
yes, so
Yeah.
women need to embrace their strength and through their femininity, and be strong. I encourage that. But also, how do we do that while still allowing, because allowance is a very feminine energy. There is
Yes.
nothing wrong with allowance when it is mutually respected and understood that it is an honor and a privilege. So how do we
Right.
allow our men to be stronger? Not because we're weaker, but
Mm.
because it truly facilitates, I think, a direction and a partnership where all of our healing is guiding us towards.
Mhm. And you really nailed it. You nailed two nails with what you were saying. So, I mean, even with women, there's this thing among women, and we need to make this a broader concept, right? You don't need to knock somebody else's crown off of her head to
Mm-hmm.
feel better,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. A strong woman will straighten the other woman's crown, essentially. Um, so it isn't about weakening yourself. You don't have to give something away to someone to empower them necessarily. Um, the two things are not mutually exclusive, but also for both the masculine and the feminine, meekness. It's a terrible word. I hate the way that the word sounds, but I love what it means.
It sounds like weakness.
It sounds exactly like weakness, and that's what we've always thought of it as. That is not what it is. Meekness is, and I think Jordan Peterson said it in an incredible way. I love so many things that man has to say. He said, be a monster, be an absolute monster, and then learn how to control it.
I agree. I love that too. I stand behind it full-heartedly,
Yes.
because all of us have a dark side. All of us have a dark side. You cannot pretend that dark side doesn't exist, and you can pretend that you will heal yourself to the kingdoms come home, like and that you will be rid of your monster. You will never be rid of your monster. Healing is about learning how to control it and not let it control you. And
Yep.
that's exactly what you're talking about. And so I stand behind that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's an aspect of that piece, but even from, I mean, I always go back to this because this is my experience and this is my worldview, but I have a biblical worldview. And meekness is used to describe Jesus. People think he was just this weak guy. That's not at all the case. I mean, Meekness is, I could walk into a room and I could completely destroy it because y'all would deserve it, but I'm not going to. I have it under control, and I'm going to be patient, and I'm going to wait. And the part of the Jesus that people miss, and this is what men need to learn to model after, because it's a really freaking good model, is in the book of Revelation. Jesus doesn't come in weak. He comes in as a warrior riding on a horse with blood on his sword and fire from his eyes and a tattoo on his thigh. Like, he is coming in as a warrior king. And we need men who are warriors. Why? Because women need it. Our kids need it. Our society needs it. What is attractive about masculinity? It makes me feel secure. It makes me feel more feminine, which is nice because I get a break from living in my masculine. It just, I mean, there are just so many other things that come with, the leadership, the security. They're not looking for their mama, which is
Well, no,
nice.
masculinity is all about, when we talk about the masculine energies, um, focus, direction, clarity, protection, right?
Yes.
Are all masculine qualities,
Be on
structure,
mission.
boundaries, it's all defining things. And when the man provides that, okay, when the masculine provides that, the woman is allowed to be flowy and knows that she will never like go into places that maybe are harmful to her, but she can still explore all she needs to explore, knowing that she's protected. So she can go deep into her creativity. She can go deep into the darkness of emotions and learn what she needs to learn. She can go into the mystery. She can go into the tenderness. Go
Yeah.
into the tenderness because someone there is to protect her tenderness that actually fuels a masculine. Like
Yes.
I was on a podcast with Matt.
Both are so necessary.
Yeah, I was on Matt Gottesman's podcast and we were talking about this, and he was saying like men love it. Like they feel more like a man when you can bring in that nurturing, tender energy. Like they just love that. Like it's
Yeah.
like a big turn on.
Yeah.
And it's because they know they're being taken care of in a way that they need, and they're taking care of us in a way that we need. And it doesn't mean that the two can't also be offered from each other in different ways, but there's
Yeah.
a prominence within each role. And I think we live in a world that is so like this or that we don't
Yeah.
realize it can be this and that. And that
Yes.
there might be areas where you're going to excel more and you've got your strengths, and someone else is going to excel more where they have their strengths, but it
Yeah.
doesn't mean you can't utilize other things. And so we're just always like black or white,
Yeah. And it's supposed to be a dance. Why
Mm-hmm.
can't it be a dance? I mean, even in a really good dancing situation, there may be little moments where the woman leads, to add some interest into it because but it should be fun. It should be a dance and it should be a dovetail. And we keep trying to neutralize everything where we're trying to be the same. And it's hurting.
Yeah.
It's hurting us. Even
What
if
if,
we think that we're doing it for a particular goal, it's eroding the foundation of the goal that we are striving for by trying to do that.
no, I agree. I agree. What have men been sharing with you? Because I know you work with a lot of you work with a lot of different men, um,
Yeah.
in what they need from women in order to feel safe enough to explore their masculinity.
Yeah. No, it's good. I've actually been talking to some of the men in my circle to ask exactly that, just to make sure some of the things that, I was thinking were really on point. And it really boils down to a lot of the things that you and I have been talking about. They want affirmation. They want respect. They want to have a woman be proud of them. And they want the opportunity to chase, and they want the opportunity to lead. And men are desperately afraid of failing. Let's Let's be clear on that. I mean, it's a big responsibility. The way that God has designed for men to be, the order of things, it's a huge responsibility. I mean, if we look at it again, going back to just my biblical view, you know, the call for men is to die for their wives. Women are simply called to respect their husbands.
Ooh, that one hit
That's
hard.
big, right?
That one hit straight to the heart.
Right? That's it. That is the soul of it right there. So when we need to respect our men, to draw this out of them, we need to keep in mind what the call is for them. It's a big thing to carry, and they're designed to carry it. But we need to not undermine them. We need to not be abusive to them. They might get it wrong. I know it's a novel concept. They might get it wrong, but we're going to get it wrong too. Give them some grace, give them some room to speak. Stop trying to soften all of their edges. That is the warrior that you want, that goes after the bump in the night. Don't try and soften and make all of it super, super, super safe in a padded room. They're not designed that way. At that point, you've over domesticated them. You have a pet, not a partner. So
I think if there's any kind of safety you want to provide your partner, like your masculine partner, is that you want to just make it safe enough for them to explore their masculinity without feeling like they're doing something wrong, or that they're going to be rejected for that.
yes.
Because that can cause a lot of damage. And I think if we're going to allow that to happen, we've got to know that it's going to go off the edges sometimes. It's going to go a little off the cliff sometimes.
Yeah.
And you've got to be okay with that. You know, how do you know where your edges are if you don't go past them? So
Yes.
I think that we have gotten too comfortable with like, everything's got to stay within inside the lines, you know, don't go outside the lines, like don't do it. But really, that's how we learn our boundaries. That's how we learn what works for us, what doesn't work for us. That's how we learn what's okay, what's not okay. And so there has to be some grace. There has to be some grace there.
Yes. Allow them some room for self-discovery. And they'll allow you to find a partner that will allow you room for self-discovery as well. And yes, give them, and this was another, you know, we've talked about giving men room to speak, but there was one of the guys, and I actually just want to read it verbatim because he says it so well, I'm going to screw it up. So I'm going to read what he said because it just really, I love it. And he says, sometimes men don't need to hear anyone speak to their pain, which is what women, I feel like that's what we always want. So if we're trying to, we need to understand that men are different and appreciate that. Stop trying to, at that point, you're turning into their mother. Anyway, sometimes men don't need to hear anyone speak to their pain. Sometimes they need someone to listen and allow them to try to articulate it for themselves. This is a practice of self-discovery that is not popular or taught well consistently in our culture. Though simple, it's not easy, and it's often the hardest part of finding a person who can listen with patience and not jump to conclusions too fast or at all. Healing takes time, and solutions can take weeks, months, or even years. Patience is the key to life for both genders.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us. Who wrote that?
This was my buddy Ian.
Oh, wow.
So he and his wife are my production team. They're incredible. And these two people, we share, you know, the same values, and we all have just these warrior spirits. And so they can speak into my life in ways that other people can't. You know, they've earned that space for me, but also I just have such a deep respect in watching their marriage. I know he has a lot to say, and he sure does. I mean, we've had a great conversation, but yeah, from a man that got masculinity right, he has a lot to offer. And to these men who have, you know, there's another guy that I talked to, totally opposite side of the spectrum, grew up in a family where his dad was terribly passive, was no role model really whatsoever. He went into the military, which is hyper masculine, you know, And then, so that's not really that's too much bravado. So that's not helpful. And then he went into the art culture, which is inundated with feminists, which is terribly demoralizing. So he's looking for and trying to find, what does healthy masculinity look like for me? Where is a good community or space that I can go to find that? And so the men that have it need to start standing up and speaking it. And they need to offer that to the men around them, because there are men that genuinely want to find it and they don't know where to go.
Yeah.
So those that do have it need to start mentoring and looking for opportunities to breathe that back into our culture, to teach it again. And there is an entire generation of men and young men that are eager for it. There's another guy I talked to, his son is in college, and so this is an interesting thing. So his son and his friends are kind of rebels. And this is just funny. So they're kind of rebels, but they're rebels in a way of being gentlemen, because it's really not something that's terribly appreciated. So they're out there dating boldly, being rebels, but like, I'm gonna open her door and see what she does. I'm gonna pay for the first date and see what she does. And if she balks against it, he's like, nah, that ain't it. I don't want it. Nope, moving on.
Yeah.
So in a way, there's a hunger, there's a recognition, even if they don't understand where it's coming from, the pendulum is about to start swinging the other way because it needs to.
Well, you know what's good about that? I like that because the man is declaring what his needs are.
Yeah.
Like he needs you to be okay with that, because that allows him to be in his masculine. And
Yes.
if women start getting rejected simply because they're not allowing the man to be the man in that regard, like allowing just, chivalry, basically, then it's going to start programming. But what I like it is that it's setting boundaries, and it's a very healthy boundary. And I think a lot of us have been more concerned about what women need, and men have been left behind in that conversation. And we need to be on board and on the same page about what both needs are, so that we can actually address them healthfully and appropriately.
Yes. Men, hold that line. We women need it, because it will help reprogram things back to a much healthier operating point. And if we understand, if we look at things through the lens, I mean, we all have our own trauma lenses and all that sort of thing. We need to go into this understanding our biases, understand the things our dads did or they didn't do, or our mothers did and they didn't do, right? Mothers are more formative for men and fathers are more formative for women. There's a reason for that. But we need to understand what those things are. It's okay that it's not even okay that those things happened, but it's okay to acknowledge that they happened. But at some point you got to take off that filter. Like, you know what, that's a filter that I just developed in dysfunction. If I want something different, those dysfunctional skills that I developed, that dysfunctional lens that I developed to survive, single moms, I got this. Hey, absolutely. And we thank you for having it, 100%. But at some point, you need to allow other people to help you, right? Those were skills that you developed out of dysfunction. So you need to be able to set that down and learn something new in a new season. And teach your sons the same thing, right? Just because mom's got it, that's not ideal. Help push them into some sort of community where they can get some sort of father figure to help. You can't be both.
Yeah. And this goes also, I want to say this for same-sex partners, whether you're both females or both males, when you're having children, it's really important to have an opposite sex role model in their life that is prominent. It's not because you're not good enough. It has nothing to do with that. I'm sure you're amazing. It's about allowing the child to have the necessary role models that are integral to developing both the masculine and the feminine within them. And it doesn't matter what you say a father can only offer what a father offers, and a mother can only offer what a mother offers. And this has been actually tested scientifically. They can see a child's body will respond with different hormones to different bodies. And so this isn't to say that you're not good enough. You are. And, love is so important in that child's life. And if you're offering that child love and support, thank you so much. But also understand that they're going to need a little bit more than that to help balance that out. And I think it's just important to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And let's face it too. I mean, there's plenty of opposite sex parents that are doing shitty jobs, so it's
people
not
are people.
People are people. Exactly. People are people.
People are people, 100%. But yeah, looking for, getting into community, and we all need a sense of community, but to support our men in their masculinity, where they can look for, in the military, they call it a quiet professional, which kind of is right in the line of meekness. So a good example of a quiet professional, if you've never seen one before, you wouldn't know what that is. But particularly if you've never seen one before, the minute you encounter one, it stands out. And a quiet professional example of one would be, say, a special forces guy who walks in and he's, 5'7", and he's very average looking, and he's not built like a bodybuilder and all of those things, and he doesn't even wear all of his medals, none of that sort of a thing. And you walk around thinking, oh, he's just average, he's very low key about it. But then you learn later, all of the missions that he's been on, all of the things that he's accomplished, and then you see how he handles when something goes sideways, when the metal meets the meat, and you watch that person in action. The manner in which they handle themselves is with surgical precision. As the professional, they can absolutely decimate the enemy. That's meekness, and that is a quiet professional. Our men need to learn that. It isn't about bravado.
No.
It isn't.
No. There's nothing. It's quite a turnoff, because if you need to be that loud, then you don't believe it yourself.
100%. If you need to switch the game to digital for Top Golf, so that you can win a little more, that's just not sexy. Nobody wants that.
No, they don't. Oh, little inside.
I mean, not that that's ever happened. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So, well, I really appreciate you coming on the show again and having this conversation with me, so that the audience can also listen in. I think it's important. We've spent a lot of time talking about what the feminine needs, and I want to say that was valid. It was absolutely needed, but we should have been having the conversation while still talking about the masculine needs. We shouldn't have just left it behind. And this is one of the reasons why I'm not particularly fond of all women's events. I don't really enjoy them very much. It's not that I don't enjoy my girl time or enjoy hanging out with just the girls. I do enjoy that, and I think it's necessary. And I do think that there is a time and place for all women events. I do. I'm not dogging that completely, but for the most part, I'm more interested in making sure the conversation is well-rounded, and that I'm hearing from both sides, and that I'm getting input from both polarities. And so, and I think that both sides want to hear what is there to be learned. And so this is why, division is so destructive to our ability to understand one another, is that if we truly stop talking to one another or allowing the conversation to be had, even if we don't agree, we will never find the common ground where we can come into partnership and work harmoniously.
Yes.
So
you said it, and across the board. I mean, that's what our culture is killing it themselves for. We talk about unity, and all we are is about division, because we're just trying to scream louder than the other person, neutralize everything, and be so tolerant of everything that we drown out the polarity that is there on purpose, that sharpens us, that makes us healthy, that keeps our society strong. We need all of those things. We need to stop dulling the edges. We need to be iron that sharpens iron, and we listen intentionally to the other person to get to know them, develop rapport.
Yeah.
Respect will come out of that. And then if you want to talk to them about the ways that you're different, they will respect it. Things that you disagree on, maybe they can respect it because they understand you and your intentions and where you come from, so that when you do speak imperfectly, there's grace for that.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. Well said.
Love it.
Well said. And
this was fun.
I think if there are any men in the audience who may want to contact you or reach out to you, or even women for that matter, how do they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So I'll send you the links for my website, but it's ahrealtalk.com. So it's my name, Amy Hines, ahrealtalk.com. You can contact me through there. I have a YouTube channel as well. It's Amy Hines Real Talk. So yeah, I would love to hear from them. And I really do want to hear, I think from this conversation, I think my ask would be, is that men in particular engage, both men and women, but men have been the ones that haven't had the voice for a while. And so I would really love to hear the masculine perspective on the things that we've talked about. And maybe from some of those comments and the feedback we get, we can do a follow-up episode to talk about some of those things. Would be really fun.
Yeah, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you. So everyone, ahrealtalk.com, you can find Amy there, reach out to her if this really resonated with you, or there's something you'd like to share with her or work with her. She's wonderful. She's gifted. She's on point. And thank you so much, Amy, for being on the show. And to my audience, thank you so much for all of your support. I love you guys so much. I thank you for giving me this opportunity to have these conversations. I thank you for showing up and giving me the space to do this. Thank you.